Finley to throw. Over the middle, intercepted. Woolfolk again. Woolfolk the other way at the 30, the 40. Woolfolk to midfield. Miles Woolfolk with the pick, the heels on the doorstep of an enormous victory. Williams is the running back next to Howe. Play action. Howe will now lob it down the near side. Newsom with a man all over him. Pins the ball against the back of the defender and brings it in. Heels can get a first down at the 3. Howe, pump fake to the right. Now he's going to run to the left. Howe at the 5, takes the shot. Pinballing off the chains for the touchdown. Sam Howe showing the toughness for 6. Cardinals down 4, 35-31. May has the shotgun snap. Pressure coming. Rolls to the right. Throws to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Antoine Green! 16 seconds to go. No flag. Snapping it off the 8-yard line. May pulls it, tries to roll to the front. Oh, now he's going to throw it and score! Christian May throws it to Paytor in the end zone for the touchdown. May throws it left for the left-handed. Was walking out on the run and threw it left-handed. Bernard fields it at the 26. Heading to the far side. Gio at the 35. Gio, he's at the 50. No, he's not. Yes, he is. Gio, he's going to take it for a touchdown. Are you kidding me?
What's going on, guys? Welcome into another edition of the Heel Tough Blog Podcast. It's your host, Anthony Pagnotta, here with you guys as always. And tonight, live on all our platforms here. Sorry, we're a little late. Had some technical difficulties that we were dealing with, but we got those ironed out. And we are here to talk about Carolina's game against the Duke Blue Devils as they look to get the victory bell back after a heartbreaking loss last year to Duke, where Carolina was in control in the first half, dominating in the first half. And then Duke comes all the way back and takes down Carolina. So now time to enact a little bit of revenge in the first ever matchup for Bill Belichick against the Duke Blue Devils. So that'll be very interesting when they take the field on Saturday afternoon. We'll tell you about the Duke team that Carolina will be facing. We'll also tell you about some of the Tar Heel storylines around this team heading into the game. We'll give you the keys to the game, predict the game, and then we do have one closing note that I do want to get to before we are out of this edition of the podcast. But as I mentioned, Tar Heels looking to get the victory bell back after winning it the previous 4 years prior to last season and beat Duke for the first time under Bill Belichick, and do so with their backs against the wall as they try to stay alive to make a bowl game at the end of the season. Tar Heels lead the all-time series 63-42-4. They won the previous 4 matchups, as I mentioned, prior to last year. And so they are hoping to turn this one back in the right direction. You know, the thing is that, coming into this game, and we talked about this a little bit, and we'll talk about it a little bit later on as well. It's, this game, you wonder about the intensity level that Carolina is going to bring to this one. Bill Belichick said when he first got to Carolina that his first words were beat Duke. That was Billy's first words. So we'll see whether or not this game really means that much to him when they take the field on Saturday, because if it does, then Carolina is going to have a chance to win this one. If not, sitting at 4-6, then they could end up getting beat down by a Duke team that's going to be incredibly motivated. They're trying to make a bowl game themselves after a season that looked like, it had some promise for them early on in the year, but has fallen off as the year has gone along. What do you think about the, overall intensity of this game? Are you with me that you kind of think this is the game where Bill Belichick and his guys are going to be locked in and prepared for it because of what he said in that introductory press conference? Or do you think that could be next week against NC State?
I mean, it better be this week, because if you're not and you lose, then next week it doesn't matter, but you don't have as much on the line as if you win this week. You got to win both of your final games to make a bowl game. And I think that's something that is very, I think, beneficial for this program as they continue to acclimate to the Bill Belichick way of doing things. And hopefully last week was a wake-up call. And hopefully last week was a good learning experience for Bill Belichick for how much these games matter and how important these games are to the fan base. Because, we don't like losing to any of the schools in the triangle or in the Big Four. And last week, Carolina got outclassed by a team that I don't think should outclass Carolina, but that was the case. So, Duke's coming in off of a pretty poor performance. They're coming in off back-to-back losses, and what was once on the table for them is no longer on the table for them in terms of, getting to Charlotte and competing for an ACC title. So now their next goal is to get to a bowl game. And they'd love no better way to clinch that than to beat Carolina and retain the victory bell. So hopefully Bill Belichick kind of understands the magnitude of the moment, how much this game matters, and hopefully his team is ready to put their best foot forward, because they're going to have to probably play their most complete game of the season in conference play if they want to come away with a win.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, especially against a team as talented as Duke. But I think this is one of the games I don't really worry about the intensity level for Carolina. I think this will be one where you will see them bring the right mindset. As you mentioned, they've really got no choice, and you're hoping that last week was just sort of another learning moment. It sucks that this team had to have another learning moment, but you're hoping that was a humbling moment for them. And you're going up against now your two arch rivals. Yes, that team, that you played last week, definitely a little bit of a rivalry there. I think, especially under Jake Dickert, if he's going to stick around and Carolina is going to continue to play Wake as much as they have recently, well, then there's going to be a little bit of a rivalry that will develop between those sides as well. So I do think that last week was a good reminder to Carolina's players, to Carolina's staff, that you need to be locked in every single week, and that there could be a game where there is a little bit more intensity that the other team is bringing to it than you've got to make sure that's not these last two games if you want to make it to a bowl game. And when it comes to the Duke Blue Devils, you really need to bring it, especially on the defensive side of the ball, because their offense is really going to challenge Carolina. 33.4 points per game, 432.7 yards of total offense per game, 302.9 of that comes through the air. 129.8 of it comes on the ground. Darian Mensah, arguably the best quarterback in the conference this year. For some people, it might not even be arguable, but he has had a sensational season. Leads the ACC in completions with 242, leads them in yards with 3,007, touchdowns with 24, and he has just 4 interceptions so far this year, completing 68% of his passes. So a guy that is having an amazing season for Duke so far this year. You move on to the running back room, and this is going to be one of the areas where Carolina is going to be looking to bounce back, is in run defense. Look, this running game is solid. Carolina needs to be aware of it. This group, even though they only average 129.8 per game, a lot of that is because they are so pass heavy that they don't necessarily need to lean on the run. But when they have at times this year, you've gotten some success from Nate Shepherd. He averages 6.3 yards per carry and has 7 touchdowns on his 112 carries. That's nothing to scoff at. He's having a tremendous year. Anderson Castle, who's their backup running back, averaging 5.3 yards per carry and 6 touchdowns on 69 carries. So definitely a guy that Carolina, a couple of guys that Carolina has to be aware of in that backfield going into this matchup. You go to the pass catching group. Really, there are so many different guys that have had effects in this area. Cooper Barcade is the leading receiver, the transfer from Harvard, who is having an outstanding season, tied for the lead in the conference in touchdowns this season with 6. Has 53 catches for 869 yards so far this season. Sean Brown, the other leading receiver for the team, 45 catches, 598 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Shamar Hagans, another guy that is worth keeping an eye on, 30 catches, 373 yards, 5 touchdowns. Also, Andrel Anthony, who was questionable for this game, the transfer from Oklahoma, he has 5 touchdowns so far this year on his 26 catches. So a lot of different guys that can make an effect in that passing game. Didn't even mention the starting tight end for the team as well, Jeremiah Hasley. So far this season, 20 catches, 273 yards, and a touchdown. So Carolina's linebacker is going to have to be aware of him. Same thing with the safeties in the middle of the field, because that's someone who could hurt them as well. So a lot of different options for them there. Biggest thing is for them in terms of what Carolina can attack, that would be the offensive line, which has had its struggles in pass protection. Every member of the unit has allowed double-digit pressures so far this year. Decent amount of sacks allowed so far this year as well. So that is certainly something that Carolina is going to look to attack in this game, but there's no way around it. This is one of the best offenses that Carolina is going to face all season, and this defense is going to have to be locked in if they're going to come away with a victory.
Yeah, they're going to need to do what they did against Virginia in this game. And if you remember in the Virginia game, now, yes, Chandler Morris was somewhat compromised by that shoulder injury, but Carolina just dominated at the point of attack. And they took away their ability to run the football and just had them in obvious passing downs to where, you know, Melchior Bouchard, Tyler Thompson could pin their ears back and go get the quarterback. Stephen Belichick could disguise some coverages. And it really threw that high-powered offense off rhythm, and they were out of sync. And Carolina had a very good chance to win the game. I don't know if Carolina can hold this Duke offense to 17 points, but we also know with the way Carolina is compromised offensively, they can't let this game get into the 30s. If this game passes probably that 28-point threshold, it's probably not going to go our way. And Carolina knows that, but so does Duke. And so I think Duke's going to be very, I think, aggressive. I think you might see them sort of kind of chasing points because I think they know that, that Carolina is not equipped to match them drive for drive like we have been in years past. And so I think it's going to be a fun matchup. I think it's a good thing that, as of last night, Thaddeus Dixon was off the injury report or the availability report. So Carolina's getting, their best corner in time to play maybe the best quarterback they've played all season long, and they're going to need him to play at an extremely high level. But it's going to take all 3 levels of the defense probably playing their best game or right there with it of so far this season, because this Duke offense is explosive. They're dynamic. They do it a lot through the air. And, Mensa's got a 25-4 touchdown to interception ratio. So, it's not like he's going to make many mistakes. They are prone to fumble the ball. You'd imagine that was a point of emphasis this week in practice. They do commit some penalties as well, but this is an explosive and a dynamic offense that Carolina was going to have their hands full with tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, you go to the defensive side of the ball, not so much. Not the same type of unit that we expected even coming into the season for Duke. So far this year, allowing 29.6 points per game, one of the most amounts that a Carolina opponent has allowed this season. 420.3 yards of total offense allowed, 270.8 of it through the air, 146.5 of it on the ground. The defensive line has been the best unit on the team, but it is definitely on this side of the ball. But has been a little hit or miss at times with edge rushers like Vincent Anthony Jr., Wesley Williams, and interior defensive lineman Aaron Hall. I mean, these are guys, especially tackle for loss wise, that have been really, really good. I mean, you're talking about Wesley Williams, 7.5 tackles for loss. Aaron Hall, 8 tackles for loss. Vincent Anthony Jr., 11.5 tackles for loss. But then when you get to some of the sack numbers, it's a little bit different. Wesley Williams with just 2 on the season. Vincent Anthony Jr. with 6.5, but a lot of that production came earlier in the year. And then Aaron Hall with just 1.5 sacks. So they've been able to get some tackles for loss. That's certainly something that Carolina's got to be aware of in this game. But in terms of getting to the quarterback, they have had their moments where they have struggled to be able to do that. Hopefully that's something that Carolina can take advantage of, despite having an offensive line that is as beat up as just about any that we've seen at Carolina in recent memory, and one that is struggling coming off of the last couple of weeks with the performances that they've had against Stanford and Wake Forest, respectively. You go to the linebacker room for the Duke Blue Devils. Luke Margot is the guy that has played a lot there, that will definitely be in the lineup for this game. Trey Freeman, probably their best linebacker out of the two, but unfortunately for him, dealing with an injury, he is questionable as of the first availability report. We'll have to check that and see whether or not that availability report has been updated, and whether or not he is someone that is going to play in this game. I'm pulling it up right now, so hopefully we could see, but he's still questionable for this game. Same thing with Andrel Anthony, who I mentioned earlier. Then you go to the defensive backfield. One guy that we know they will be without, guy that was expected to be an all-ACC caliber safety this year, and Terry Moore, he's still out with an injury. Chandler Rivers, definitely a dangerous corner, but a guy that has given up a lot of yards. There are a couple other guys in that defensive backfield that have just been torched throughout the year. So that's certainly an area where Carolina will hope to take advantage of in this game. This defense, not the most imposing one that Carolina is going to play by any stretch of the imagination, but one especially up front that could hurt Carolina if their offensive line doesn't bring to the table what they need to.
Yeah, it's why I think it's fair to expect Carolina to be competitive and be able to put points up, because this Duke offense hasn't stopped anybody all year long. And it's kind of weird to see because, Manny Diaz's background is, on the defensive side of the football, and his first couple of years has done a really good job on that side of the ball. That's why Duke has kind of been able to maintain what Mike Elko established there. But this year they've had to become an offensive team. With that being said, that means they play in a lot of shootouts. So, Carolina, there's going to be plays, I think, there to be made against this Duke defense. Can Freddie Kitchens scheme it up, and then can Carolina execute it? Most importantly, can Gio Lopez make the throws that he hasn't made for the majority of the season? Can he be able to make those throws against this Duke defense? But it starts up front. Carolina's got to be able to establish a presence on the ground. They haven't been able to run the football the last 3 weeks the way that they've been able to for the majority of the season. And when they can't, as we heard from Brent Renner the other night when we had him on the podcast, it really bogs down this offense. There isn't an offense, I think, in the country, maybe outside of what the service academies do, that rely on staying on schedule more than Carolina. The second they get behind the chains, it's very rare they overcome that. If they get in 2nd and 10, I bet the stats prove that more often than not, they punt the football away on that drive. Or if they're in 2nd and 10 in the scoring area, they probably settle for a field goal as opposed to a touchdown. Well, field goals couldn't get it done last week against Wake Forest. They're not going to get it done this week against a Duke team that's way more explosive offensively. So they got to get the ball in their playmakers' hands. You got to get the ball to Ship. You got to get the ball to Kobe Paysour, but it starts up front. And hopefully Carolina has a much more defined running back rotation, and Damon June and Davion Goss can be able to get the type of run success we experienced the first handful of games this season.
Yeah, and that really is the first Tar Heel storyline for this game, is the offense really hoping to keep up with Duke's offense in this one. I think for this group, it's just about really leaning into what you have been successful with for most of the year when it's come to these games that you've won. And for the most part, when Carolina's won games this year, outside of the game against Stanford, they've been able to run the ball. Stanford was a game where they won through the short passing game. You would hope that that's something that Carolina is able to take advantage of in this game. But as you said, really the most important thing is that you're able to get the ball into your playmakers' hands and avoid some getting behind the sticks, because we talked about, earlier in the season how important it was for Carolina on first and second down, really on both sides of the ball. But I think you're right, especially on the offensive side of the ball, it has become crucial. And this is a group that, as I told you, defensively for Duke, is really well-versed in tackles for loss. They are one of the top teams in the country so far this year in that category. So Carolina's got to be prepared for that coming into this game and know that, in order to be able to win, you're going to have to avoid getting in those third and long, even second and long situations. Because as you said, there are times, especially when you get into scoring range, where if you do have a negative play on first down, immediately that Freddie Kitchens is going into conservative mode. He's just trying to get out of there with a field goal. I hate it. I hate that mindset, but that's where we're at in the season. This is a game where you're hoping that Carolina can keep themselves ahead of the sticks, get into those third and manageable situations throughout the game, and take advantage of them when they're there, because this Duke defense is not great, guys. This is one that can be had. So hopefully that's what we see from Carolina in this game. As you said, you need some of the playmakers to step up in terms of what they're able to do with the ball in their hands. You're going to need yards after the catch from guys like Jordan Shipp, Kobe Paysour, some of the other, whoever they're rolling out there at the slot position. You'd like to see Jake Johnson continue to do what he did last week. I think that would be huge. And don't be afraid to use the running backs out of the backfield either, catching the football. We've seen that at times this year, and it's led to some nice success for both Damon June and Davian Goss. That's something you need to be able to do in this game as well. Get it into their hands, let them make plays after the catch, because we know the ball isn't going to go downfield with much success. At least we don't think that it's going to go downfield with much success. So the way you have to manufacture explosive plays is what you do after the catch. So hopefully Carolina is able to do that in this one. Second Tar Heel storyline, sticking on the offensive side of the ball, is can Gio Lopez make the plays that he needs to? Last week against Wake Forest, he did not. He had a couple of plays that were there for him, especially late in the night. And you heard, Bryn Renner said it. Even that play to Jalen McGill, where Jalen McGill should have caught the football, it's an underthrown pass. He had the overthrown pass to Kobe Paysour on the same drive that could have allowed Carolina to score a touchdown. Doesn't happen. He's missed a lot of throws down the field that have been there throughout this year. Really, after he hit that deep shot against Charlotte, he has not hit another deep shot really the whole season. He had some success against TCU with a couple of deep shots as well, but for some reason that's disappeared from his game. And I don't know if it's a confidence thing. I don't know what it is, but in this game, you've got to find a way to complete some of those passes downfield that are open, because you're going against an explosive offense that's going to hit those plays on the other side. There will be some of those throughout the night that Carolina just isn't able to defend, because we know there are still some limitations in that secondary for the Tar Heels. So if you're Carolina, you need your quarterback to step up in this game. This has to be one of the best games that he's played all season if you're going to have a chance to win this one.
Yeah, he's got to look like the $2.1 million man you paid this offseason to come play quarterback for you. And as much as we've seen him grow and improve over the back half of the season, I mean, you're still talking about a quarterback that's thrown for less than 1,500 yards, has yet to throw for double-digit touchdowns, and we're going into game 11. That's pretty hard to fathom when you're talking about modern quarterback play at the college level, especially at the power conference level. A way to change the narrative, though, is to play well in this game and beat Duke, and then have yourself in a position to be another rival next week and become bowl eligible. But with that being said, he's got to make the throws that are there to be made. And look, we don't have the all 22 footage, so we don't know just how consistent Carolina is getting open. But I mean, we've been in the stands. Tomorrow will be our 6th game we've been in the stands for. this season, and we can see that there are throws that just have to be made at this level that he's not making. You're going to have to make them tomorrow because Carolina's going to have to score points. They're going to have to, once they get inside the 30, they can't stall. And I think that's, if you want to take something from encouraging last week was that, I mean, for really the first time, it felt like all year, Carolina could consistently move the ball from their side of the field into the opponent's side of the field. Well, then it was like once they got inside the 30, it all went to crap. And a part of it was, I think that was by design. I think Wake Forest knew, hey, we could let them move the ball, but once they get to this part of the field, we can kind of condense the field down, and they won't be able to do anything. And they were proven right. Duke's not that proficient defensively, so if Carolina can continue to move the ball, they just got to be much more efficient in terms of getting touchdowns as opposed to kicking field goals. So hopefully he's up to the task. Hopefully he takes this matchup, I'm not going to say personal, but hopefully he's up to the task because he's going to have to match Mensa throw for throw, drive for drive. And this is what you play in these types of games for. And hopefully we see the best version of Gio we've seen all year long, because I don't see a scenario where he's played the way he's played the majority of the season and Carolina comes away with a win.
Yeah, no chance. And, moving the ball in between a certain yard line and another yard line. I mean, yeah, Carolina, we've seen that because you go back to the game against Virginia, in between the 20s, very good, but got into the red zone and everything just fell apart. Last week, it was you got to the 40-yard line of Wake Forest and everything from there just completely fell apart. So you've got to find a way to be able to put the ball in the end zone. I mean, that's going to be crucial in this game more than just about any game that you've played this season, but you got to be able to hit those throws that you haven't been hitting all year long. Make a play in that deep passing game. I'm not saying that's got to be the area where you're making all your plays in this game. All of a sudden, we're turning into an offense that has 3 or 4 explosive plays in one game like that. But you've got to be able to hit one of those open shots down the field, which have been there for him from what we've seen. But, he hasn't necessarily been able to nail them. And the thing is that I think that the Tar Heel wide receivers have been getting open just based off of what we heard from Brent Renner the other night. It feels like he believes that there have been plays out there to make and that Gio is just not making them. So that would lead me to believe that, the receivers, not that they've been perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but that they have done the things that they've needed to do, especially in recent weeks, and it's on Gio Lopez to make those plays in this game. You go over to the other side of the football, and the defense looks to bounce back from their struggles at Wake. I mean, this defense, I think that was probably the most surprising thing of last week is just how many rushing yards Carolina let up. The fact that they were pushed around as easily as they were at times on the interior of that defensive line. And really the most shocking thing of all was the performance of the linebackers. Neither linebacker really played well in this game. I mean, Andrew Simpson was okay. Kamori House was just downright terrible. I mean, that was the worst game that we've seen him play at Carolina, hands down. And so really, I mean, you look at it, the defense as a whole has to bounce back, but I think it really starts with that front six, man. You've got to have a strong performance from those guys, especially that defensive line, if Carolina is going to find a way to pull an upset over the Duke Blue Devils and stay alive for a bowl game.
Yeah, what was real, I guess, disappointing was just the way that Carolina got manhandled up front. There wasn't anything that I thought Wake did that was over the top. Nothing they did sexy. I thought they were just more physical than Carolina. And I think part of that is you really saw the first time all year, well, really the first time since the second bye week, Carolina's undersized defensive line kind of be taken advantage of. But with that being said, like, the reason why they've kind of performed the way they did is because of they've been able to take advantage of their undersized, be able to get, in certain gaps and holes because it makes them harder to block. They can't happen tomorrow. Carolina's got to win at the point of attack. And I think, as good as Mensa is and as good as Mensa can be, I think you want him, to be in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8s, and you can then dial up some pressure, disguise some coverage, and just try to see if you can get him, off his game. Look, it's difficult because he's been a baller pretty much all year long because he simply had to be. But I'd much rather lose with him making plays as opposed to Duke pretty much being able to do about whatever they want to do. And it felt like at times last week, even though, Wake Forest only scored 28 points, and for the most part, it felt like Carolina's defense was the reason why they were in the game. It felt like Wake knew, hey, we can get whatever we want whenever we want it, whether it's on the ground or through the short passing game. And hopefully that's not going to be the case tomorrow. So I think you'll see bounce-back performances from Melcar Abujanade. I think Tyler Thompson will bounce back as well, but you're going to need those guys on the interior defensive line, I think, to really play the way they had played previously for the past month, to help Carolina win on 1st and 2nd down in the run game and see what they can scheme up if they can get to Duke and have them in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8 more often than not.
Yeah, that's really the key, is the early down stuff from Carolina, especially in the run game, being able to slow down whatever Duke is going to throw at them. Last week, you saw it for the first time really in a while, really back since probably the Central Florida game. And really that Central Florida game, it was a lot of the quarterback run that hurt Carolina. I mean, there were some moments that the running game was able to find success against them, but you saw those moments where the 3-4 yard gains really start to add up because you're getting into 2nd and 6. Okay, well, then that turns into either another run or a short pass play that picks up a 1st down or gets right to within a yard, and then it's 3rd and manageable. Carolina's got to make sure that they avoid getting into those 3rd and manageable situations, because that's when you sort of take away the best ability of your 2 edge rushers right now in Melcar Abujanade and Tyler Thompson. Those are guys that want to pin their ears back, that want to get after the quarterback. And if you allow them to do that in this game, this offensive line is susceptible enough to where they will be able to have success. But you've got to get into those moments. So you need the interior of the defensive line to respond. You need those guys on the edge to be able to find ways to win their one-on-one matchups in the rushing game as well. Really, a lot of it was the inside game last week. That was really where you saw the most success. Robbie Ashford was having some success on the edge, but Damon Claiborne was going right up the middle of your defense. There's good news for Carolina in this game. Darian Mensah, not a mobile quarterback, not a guy that's going to use his legs to run and pick up 1st downs. It's not there. I mean, so far this year, he has negative 48 rushing yards on just 44 carries. So you don't have to worry about that element of his game. Instead, you've got to worry about their running game potentially having some success, or that short passing game. That's the other thing that Carolina's got to be able to do, is get those hands up on the defensive line, try to come away with some of those pass deflections, because Duke's going to want to get the ball out quick and allow their guys with the football in their hands to make plays. We've seen that happen against Carolina the last few weeks. You go back to the Stanford game, really the last couple of weeks. You go back to the Stanford game, there was some success in that game when Elijah Brown was able to get the ball out quickly to his guys. And same thing last week when they were able to get it in Carlos Hernandez's hands. It led to a lot of success for Wake. So Carolina's got to be smart about that. They've got to tackle much better in this game if they want to succeed. You mentioned earlier the possible return of Thaddeus Dixon. Again, we put possible because you just don't know, but it looks like he's going to be out there. He is not on the injury report as of tonight. It wasn't on there last night either, so it's not like one that, has been upgraded throughout the process. No, this is a guy that is probably going to play for Carolina on Saturday. And when you talk about his return, especially in a game like this really does feel like a huge moment for Carolina on that defensive side of the football. Hopefully a huge moment for that secondary, that you can get him back, because let's say you still roll with Marcus Allen as your starter and Bryn Renner when he was talking to us, said that he would roll with Marcus Allen as his starter at that position. Marcus Allen plays the boundary corner, which is a much different position than playing the field corner. You see a lot more balls coming your way if you're Marcus Allen. Well, hopefully, if Marcus Allen does struggle, Carolina will be willing to put a guy like Jaden Patterson out there if that is the case. Thaddeus Dixon gives Carolina a really solid corner that has the ability to lock someone down on the outside, but also brings with him some much-needed depth for Carolina in that defensive backfield as well.
Yeah, he's your most gifted corner, so your talent level increases. Also, we saw before he got injured, he brought an attitude and an edge to that part of your defense and just to the team and the defense overall. And I think it would be a welcome addition back coming into these final two games against, rival opponents that kind of have that fire. And I think it's a real testament to him that, he's worked his way back to be able to play. Because I think when he got injured with where the season was at, and we know he's gonna play in the NFL, it could have been easy for him to, hey, I got paid. I tried to be a big part of what this coaching staff was trying to do. Didn't work out. I'm going to go prepare for the next level. That's not what he's doing. He's worked his way back to be able to play. I think he'll be fired up. And you also, we heard Brenton say, you can now use all three of those guys. You can use Allen, Patterson, and Thad Dixon on the field at the same time. And that could kind of help Carolina in a game where you're going up against a prolific quarterback that has as many different pass catching options as Duke has. So hopefully he'll be able to go. You would even imagine, maybe even if he's on a snap count or whatnot, it's still a big addition back because I think when he's healthy, he's the best corner that exists on this roster. It gives that secondary a little bit more depth as well. And this group has come a long way. They still have their issues at times. We've seen Will Harding, some others, Coleman Bryson make some plays that leave your head scratching, but they've come a long way. You add this guy into the fold, it makes them even stronger, and it's perfect timing because they're going to have to play their best game they played so far this season.
Yeah, and you're right. There was, that talk with Brent about putting those three guys on the field at the same time. I think that would be interesting, especially, Caleb Cost would have to come out of the game. I think, for the most part, Caleb Cost has actually been pretty good this year. We've seen him grow in that nickel spot. So that would be interesting to put him in that nickel spot. There is the ability, Jaden did play safety at the high school level. I don't know if you experiment with that here. I don't know how much he's been playing at the safety spot since he got to Chapel Hill, but that could be an area where you could eventually incorporate him as well if you wanted to, because he has the familiarity of playing there back at the prep level. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting how they balance those guys. We both look at it and think that, we would rather see Jaden Patterson out there, but that could be one of those things where, yeah, if you put Jaden at the boundary corner spot, he could get picked on the same way that Marcus Allen does. I think you're hoping that Marcus Allen really does close strong. Tomorrow is senior day. It's his senior day. As you guys probably saw in the poster that I made for the pregame, put all the seniors on there. Marcus was one of the guys that was on there. Hopefully he ends up coming out, performing well, and then can carry that over into a game against State, which will be, as emotional as any game that Carolina plays all season long. And hopefully you get him playing the right way with a guy in Thad Dixon that, yes, he's going to be out there because you're right. He is your best corner. I know he struggled the last time that we saw him against Clemson, but outside of that game, outside of really that one play, he had been phenomenal for most of the year for Carolina. And I think he sort of answers this next question that we have here, which is, can Carolina bring the right intensity to this game? He's one of those guys that you trust can bring the right intensity. I think, when it comes to this group, really, it's just about bringing that same mindset that you heard Bryn Renner talk about when we had him on the other night, that nothing in the world matters more right now than beating this team. And yes, part of it is that Carolina needs to win this game to be able to stay alive for a bowl game. This is a rivalry game. And in the past, we have seen certain rivalry games that Carolina has not necessarily carried as much emotion into the game as the opponent. That was a big issue under Mack Brown, a big part of the reason why Mack Brown is no longer here. The Duke game was always one that, for the most part, Carolina always seemed ready for. Last year was the disastrous collapse, but that was still a game that you felt like the intensity was in the right spot. It was just that Carolina crumbled under the pressure of a Duke team that turned out to be really good, and a Carolina team that didn't necessarily turn out to be great. This year, I think for this group, it's going to be all about the mindset that they take going into this game, because I think on paper, Carolina is the less talented team. Duke has more talent than Carolina does this year based off of all the guys that Carolina had to add through the portal. Over the next few years, that could change right back into the direction that it was when Mack Brown was there, which was Carolina was the more talented team. But it feels like Duke probably has the talent advantage in this one. That means it really comes down to what Carolina's mindset is going into this game, and hopefully they take the right one.
Yeah, look, we know this is not Carolina's biggest rival. We know that game is next week, and we know that Duke Carolina on the football field doesn't mean as much as it does on the basketball court, but you're still defined by how you play in these games. Some of your fondest memories as Carolina fans are, watching how you perform against Duke, how you perform against NC State. I mean, I can remember when I first got into the sport, even though Carolina was bad, you still beat Duke. And they'd won like 21 out of 22. And then when Duke got really good, you learned how bad those losses hurt and how much they sting. And last year hurt as bad as any, because you blew a 21-0 lead on the road after the James Madison debacle that could have maybe saved that season and turned that season around. So, look, I thought when Belichick got hired, he would treat the in-state games like division games in the NFL. We saw how dominant he was against the Dolphins, the Jets, and the Bills during his time with the Patriots. I'm not saying that's not what happened last week against Wake Forest. I do think with the kind of how that game ended and the way that Wake celebrated and some of the jawing that took place afterwards, he probably got a nice wake-up call to it's different at the NFL level or at the college level. Because, you are going to – we work with the Wake Forest fan. We had to hear about it all week long. We work with the Duke fan. We have to deal with NC State fans that are obsessed with us. And so these games matter. And so I think there will be a different intensity level that has kind of set the tone for this game. And I do think, like, it sucks that we're in this position. I think it's easier to get your guys motivated, pissed off, ready to play hard, whatever it is, when you still have something to play for. And Carolina is trying to make a bowl game. And hopefully they're ready to go tomorrow. I think it'll be interesting to see the atmosphere in Keenan, what that crowd will be like. I think it's supposed to rain tomorrow after that. Could put a damper on some things. But, nonetheless, hopefully Carolina is ready to go, because they're going to have to play the best game they've played so far this season. Because, as you mentioned, on paper, they're not the more gifted team, and they're going to find ways to kind of beat a team that's more talented than they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be easy. As you mentioned, the weather could make it more complicated. So that is certainly something that we're going to have to be aware of for tomorrow. Now let's get to our keys to the game. First one, we won't spend any time on it. I'm literally just going to give it to you and we'll move on, because we literally just talked about it. It's bring the right mindset to the game. Carolina's got to do that. That's where it starts. If they're ready, if they bring that intensity, then Carolina is going to have a chance to win this game. The second key to the game is win the line of scrimmage. For this group, I think it's important for a lot of these games, but I think last week really showed you that it is extra important for Carolina. Mainly defensively, you've got to win the line of scrimmage, because you've got to keep this game lower scoring. So I think that's what you're really looking for from Carolina. You want to see Milcard Abujade return to the form that he had. Tyler Thompson, similar in the previous 4 weeks that they had before the Wake Forest game. If they can return to that type of production, then I think Carolina is going to be fine. But the main part is you need that interior defensive line to respond. They got beat down last week, but they've got some guys that have really been playing well in there. CJ Mims, Isaiah Johnson, Leroy Jackson, DeAndre Robinson has been the guy that has probably flashed the least out of that group, but even he has had a pretty solid season. You need those guys to bounce back, respond to what happened last week, and be dominant on the inside for Carolina to slow down the run game, make Duke have to pass the football the entire day, and get them in those third and long situations. Really win on those first 2 downs so that you can get them into those third down situations that allow your edge rushers to go off. And then when you get to the other side, really it's about being able to run the football, man. You've got to be able to do that in this game. I know that, Duke's defense is a group that has been passed on a lot this year, but we've talked about it. You've got to be able to open up the pass with your running game. And you look at the 3 wins that Carolina has had this season outside of the Stanford win. Carolina has been able to run the football in every one of those games, and every one of those games were comfortable wins. I don't think that would mean a comfortable win for Carolina in this game, but what I do think it would mean is that Carolina's offense is able to be competitive. So you need that offensive line that's banged up to be able to do its job in run blocking, hold up in pass protection, and I think Carolina can win this game.
Yeah, look, every game this time of the year is won at the line of scrimmage. Rivalry games are won at the line of scrimmage. And I'll reiterate it. Carolina's got to do defensively in this game what they did in the Virginia game to really give themselves a shot. And if they can have that same type of impact. Remember, Virginia couldn't run the ball on Carolina. And they had a hard time blocking Carolina. Well, was that the game it was the Stanford game. They had 9 sacks, but they just lived in the backfield, and they lived in the face of Chandler Morris, created a muddy pocket. They got hit after hit on him. And it just took their whole rhythm, took the whole offense out of rhythm. You got to do the same thing in this game against an offense that when they're clicking, they've scored 30 on just about anybody they've played so far this season. This is an offense that went on the road to Clemson and put a 40-burger on them, which is, I know Clemson isn't what they were supposed to be. Not many teams walk into Death Valley and drop 40 on the Tigers. And so it's going to start up front with the defensive line, bouncing back from maybe their most disappointing performance of the season, really, since that second bye week. And then offensively, you're right. It's just being able to establish that line of scrimmage and be able to run the football. If Carolina can only run the ball the way they've ran the last 3 games, they're not going to win the football game. Mm-hmm. And I doubt they'll be competitive. Like they're going to probably need to get, I'd say 125, 150 on the ground to really give themselves a shot. Because if they get that amount of rushing yards, it's keeping their offense on schedule. And they push Gio in manageable passing downs and distances. So, which the more physical team, I think, is going to be the team that's going to come away with the win tomorrow. We've seen Carolina bring their heart out. We've seen Carolina lay the wood. After a week where they got out-physicaled by Wake Forest, I think they'll be ready to respond, and hopefully they're ready to play up to that level of physicality they're going to need to have a chance to win.
Yeah, last key to the game is create turnovers. We have watched these Duke games this year, and especially in the big games that they have played, they have turned the football over at a pretty high rate. And, even though Darian Mensah only has 4 interceptions, all those interceptions have been very important. You've had some of the fumble issues that they've had. Carolina's got to be able to get some of those turnovers in this game. Taking care of the football is going to be important, but it's got to start by creating some of those turnovers. We haven't seen that a ton from Carolina this year. They aren't one of those teams that's taking the ball away at a ridiculously high rate, and they're just finding a way to turn it back over. They need to be a group that comes out in this game makes it a point to create some of those turnovers, because if you can, and you can create some short fields for your offense that's struggling, it could allow you to be able to win the game off of field position and find, some of those important scores when you need them in this game.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right about that. And you look at some of the games that Duke has lost, it's been because of turnovers or just the way the games have kind of turned upside down on them. You go back to an Illinois game earlier this year where statistically they played on the same level with Illinois, but lost by 25 because of turnovers, penalties, just really, negating drives. Has been sloppy play. You look at the loss against Georgia Tech where they take the opening possession all the way down to the 2-yard line. They fumble it, and then Georgia Tech goes on to win in blowout fashion. It's been the little things that have really kept Duke from having the type of season that they probably should have had, considering the level of quarterback play that they've gotten so far from Darian Mensah. So Carolina needs to recreate that and be able to take advantage of that. If they can get some short fields and get some touchdowns, as opposed to kicking field goals, like that's how you win a game at home against your rival that you're basically a touchdown underdog against. And so, this is something that has plagued Duke all season long. It's not like it's going to just get cleared up at this point in the year. Like at this point in the year, this is who they are. This is part of Duke's DNA, the fabric of this year's football team. You need to exploit that. And the best Bill Belichick teams in New England, guess what they did? They exploited that. That's got to be a point of emphasis so far in the week of practice leading up to the game. So I'd say if Carolina could force 2 turnovers and be able to get at least 10 points off of those turnovers, that could go a real long way to them finding a way to beat their second biggest rival and regain possession of the victory bell.
Yeah, Duke in losses this season, their 5 losses this year, -8 in the turnover margin. So Carolina definitely has to take advantage of that in this game. All right, tomorrow, 3:30 ACC Network, Carolina versus Duke, a chance to gain the Liberty Bell back after losing it last year. What do you see happening?
Yeah, I made my prediction officially yesterday when I was on with Locked On Isaac Shade. I'll keep my same prediction here. I picked Carolina, and I picked Carolina to win the game 26-24, not passing that 27-point threshold, which is the most they've scored against a power conference opponent, of course, in the win at Syracuse. I'm not going that bold. I'm not going to think Carolina's going to get to that number, but I think Carolina will be motivated. I think Duke will do the things that have allowed Duke to lose some games this year that Duke shouldn't have. And I think, Carolina can build off the success they had last week, being able to move the ball, but this week being able to finish drives in a way they haven't been able to finish drives all season long. So give me Carolina at home for the final time this season. Can't believe it's already the final home game of the year. Can't believe it's going to be another 9 months where we're back in Kenan Stadium. But I think Carolina gets a win to keep their bowl eligibility hopes alive.
I agree with you. I think Carolina wins this game. I think a big part of it is that Duke, we've seen it, man. They are a team that when they get into these important games, they have found a way to turn the football over. I think you're going to see that again in this one. I think Carolina gets a few of them off of them. Now, they got to be smart. They've got to hold on to the football as well. I think for the most part, you've seen that. That hasn't really been a major issue for Carolina during these last few weeks. It's just, the last week against Wake Forest, they just couldn't find a way to score in the red zone, I think, or after they got past the 40-yard line. This week, I think they will be able to find the end zone a couple of times in this one, maybe one of them on the defensive side of the ball. That would be nice. I think they do just enough in this game to be able to win it. Offensively, I think they are able to run the football a little bit. I trust that this offensive line gets it done against this defensive line for Duke, even though there probably will be some moments where there'll be some frustrating tackles for loss that lead to drives stalling out. I think Carolina just does enough. I think Gio Lopez steps up in the second half like he has been in the 2 wins that Carolina has. I think they get it done over the Duke Blue Devils 24-21. to 21 with a dominant day from that defensive line, which I think will be able to get after the quarterback. And that'll be the reason that we're sitting here talking about a Carolina win on Monday. Wanted to, before we got out of here, I did mention that I had a closing note. We'll get to that in just a second. Did want to point out the guys that we know will be playing their last games in Kenan Stadium here on Saturday. Not sure on some of the other guys. There could be some other guys that are listed as juniors that are graduating. I mean, heck, there are guys that I have seen in years past that were listed as sophomores that ended up being guys that walked on senior day and eventually, came back to the program or whatever. But these are the guys that we know for sure will be playing their final games in Kenan Stadium. That'll be Kobe Paysour, Tom McGinnis, Smith Vilbert, Marcus Allen, Will Hardy, Gavin Gibson, Thaddeus Dixon, Andrew Simpson, Jordan Owens, Reese Verhoff, Max Johnson, Spencer Triplett, Willow Steen, Paul Barton, and Christo Kelly. Now, Christo Kelly is interesting. He could end up coming back next year, I would think, based off of the fact that he literally has not played in a game all year. Or no, he played in some games earlier in the season. I think he played in maybe 2 games all season long. So that certainly is a guy that, could be on the table to come back. Everybody else looks like they're going to be out of eligibility there. So there will be nobody that will be returning for Carolina out of that group. So to all those guys, we'll be cheering you guys on from the stands. We'll definitely be giving you guys a round of applause as they go through the senior day festivities, and wish you guys the best and the most success out there, not only on Saturday, but after your careers are over at Carolina. Been some fun guys to watch out there like Kobe Paysour and Will Hardy as their careers have progressed. So wishing those guys the best here from the Heel Tough Blog podcast. The one note that I did want to mention, Carolina losing another commitment in the 2026 class at the tight end position yesterday. That's 2026 3-star athlete Avian Williams, who decommitted. He was a guy that was going to play tight end for Carolina, meaning they have just one tight end committed in the 2026 class as of right now. That is Carson Sneed. So Carolina needing somebody else in that tight end room. They've got a couple of guys that they're looking at. Really, it's down to 3 guys now that Carolina could end up landing, including one that is going to be on campus this weekend in Purdue commit Dream Rashad. You also have fellow Purdue commit Armari Towns, who has already visited Carolina, along with Marcus Monroe, who's an in-state prospect committed to Stanford, who has also visited. So those look like the 3 options that Carolina still has on the table for them. Hopefully they're able to land somebody else at that tight end position. But that's going to wrap it up for tonight's edition of the podcast. Guys, make sure you head over to the website, HeelToughBlog.com. Check out everything that we got over there for you guys. Going to have the preview up for you guys in the morning so that you can read that. Everything that you need to know about the Duke Blue Devils on game day, we'll have you prepared for the game. Also, we'll have the recap for you guys. Hoping to get that one up tomorrow night at some point, since it is a 3:30 game. I'm not going to be driving to this game, so that means that I will be able to work on that a little bit on the way home. So hopefully we'll be able to get that out to you guys late tomorrow night for some of you sickos that want to read it, and then early in the morning on Sunday for some of you guys that'll be going to bed probably at a normal hour on Saturday night. So make sure that you check out all of that. We'll have any other news and notes around the program, recruiting, any other notes about who's leaving at the end of the season, stuff like that. We'll be having you guys covered with all that. And then on the basketball side of things, we've had you covered through the Tar Heels 5-0 start. Carolina getting ready to play during the holidays out in the Fort Myers Classic. So make sure that you guys are locked in. We'll have you covered with everything on the website, in terms of the previews and recaps. Josh will be taking care of that. And then on the podcast side of things, same place you get these podcasts in terms of both audio and video. You'll be able to watch the podcast as we take you through the week down there at Fort Myers. So Make sure you're doing that. Head over to our YouTube page. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. That would really help us out. And if you are someone that is watching this edition of the podcast somewhere else, YouTube's the best place to watch it, guys. That's what helps us out, helps us get these sponsors and everything like that. So make sure that you're over there doing that. So once again, that wraps it up for this edition of the podcast. Want to thank Josh for hosting with me. Want to thank you guys for watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels and go to hell, Duke.